The queer community is multifaceted, and many sit at different intersections. Trans people of color have to battle transphobia and racism, making their struggles different from white queer people. White queer people who don't have to deal with systematic racism, ignoring improving their intersectionality. This video essay will showcase 2 examples of large white queer creators who have done good work but need improvement on their intersectionality. Let's get to my first example, Barrett Paul. Barrett has made content on YouTube for years, but struggled to maintain a larger audience despite his palatable look. He didn't blow up until 2020 when he made TikTok content on Black women issues. With his attractive looks and being a gay white man, he was able to gain a following larger than 90% of the Black TikTokers speaking on their own plight. That would be something tolerable if it was just that one issue, but he was found out to be a grifter. Pandering to a vulnerable Black women audience to build his own following and get verified on several platforms, the upcoming TikToks you'll see will give context to how his grift was found out and how he handled the fallout.
We need to talk about Barrett Paul.
As a white queer man, as Black men, and as white women, we sit one step away from the power structure that is the top of the social hierarchy within the patriarchy.
The problem is you seem to have a fundamental misunderstanding of what intersectionality actually is. You saying that Black men, white women, and white queers are one level below the dominating power structure comes from an additive understanding of intersectionality, and it's a misunderstanding.
Barrett's response to this very fair criticism was to call Lex a misogynist. All because Lex drove home the point that Black men also suffer gendered violence under the white supremacist patriarchy. The belief that Black men are somehow only one step removed from the center of power in this country is simply laughable. If you believe this, unfollow me right now. I want to be clear that this was a conversation about power and not a conversation about whether or not Black men can be violent towards Black women. Lex never made that point, despite how many times Barrett tried to misconstrue what he was saying to make it seem like that's what he said. But let's move on. Weeks later, a white gay man made a video that was clearly anti-Black, and Barrett Paul decided to call him out on his very public platform. This didn't sit right with me because Barrett had not made amends with Lex. He had not taken accountability for the ways in which he unfairly targeted Lex. And so I said something about it. So myself and several other Black creators ended up going to Barrett's page and commenting on the video, demanding accountability for his behavior with Lex, and demanded that he stops talking about Black issues because he obviously doesn't have the range. It's going to be a lot of screenshots coming up, so pause to read. Number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. I want to take a second to talk about that last screenshot specifically because one thing that really bothers me about Barrett is the way that he tokenizes Black women. He knows that the support he gets from Black women comes from a place of desperation, that Black women are so desperate to have their pain validated, acknowledged, and seen that they will support tooth and nail anybody who gives them even a little bit of acknowledgement about that. And he capitalized off of that desperation. Then he said this, which was absolutely a dog whistle for Black people who are attacking me are the reason why nothing will ever get done, right? This prompted his then friend and former podcast co-host, Evelyn, also known as Perspective, to post the following video.
Is a reason why we will never have liberation. This is literally the dumbest video that I've seen in a while.
Even though Evelyn never names him in the video, it's clear from the language that she uses that she was supporting him in his earlier statement. Since then, my mutual tope, who's the Black woman you see calling this statement stupid, Evelyn and I have had conversations offline where we discussed why her take was a bad one. And Evelyn has shown, willingness to listen and to grow, something that Barrett refused to do. And that, my friends, is where things start to get messy. This is a screenshot of a conversation between Evelyn in blue and Barrett in gray. Notice how he says that Black people bullied Evelyn into submission, as we've done for a long time. This is him pitting Asians and Black folks against each other. Classic white supremacist technique.
But if you need another reason not to support Barrett Paul, he called a bunch of Black creators those people after we tried to hold him and Evelyn, aka Perspective, accountable for the harm that they caused a lot of Black people by spreading misinformation. He also inserted an untrue statement into this barrage of texts saying that Black people have bullied Asian people into submission for a long time. This man is nothing but a grifter, a fraud, and frankly, racist. And truthfully, it's just time for him and anyone like him to go. Reb, Pablo, and the rest of Black TikTok had to get Barrett Paul together. It's so alarming that a white man, queer or not, can build an entire platform off of Black femme plight, only to pit Black and Asian people against each other, which is fundamentally a white supremacy tactic. Saying Black people bullied Asian people but yet need the same Black people's plight to cash out his checks. Seeing his initial reaction to the text messages leaking was the most mask-off moment. Instead of giving an apology, he lashes out at Evelyn in a video stating his privacy was infringed on. He followed that video with filing for a defamation lawsuit against her as well. Of course, he eventually came with a disingenuous apology once he realized publicly lashing out wasn't the best thing for his image. Thankfully, the black community didn't accept his apology, so much so that Barrett Paul completely shifted his content towards white feminism. No more videos about racism or black people's plight. He gained the following that he needed for that rebranding and just going as business as usual. The only happy ending about the situation is that he stayed out of black people's business while he does his shirtless activism. Another big white queer person we're going to talk about is Keffels. Keffels is a large trans Canadian Twitch streamer. She blew up to her peak when she helped take down the hate website Kiwi Farms. This resulted in her getting doxxed and harassed by transphobes. She was able to move out into a new safe location and continue her work as a trans streamer. I wish it could end here and give her roses for her work, but there's some nuanced issues that have yet to be addressed. Here in this video, you'll see one of those issues displayed as she pushes an ideology that's harmful to trans and queer people.
I don't give a shit. I just don't care. Like, if I can withstand the entirety of the heat of Kiwi Farms, I can say that there are a lot of toxic people in the trans community who attack their own community more than they do anything that materially benefits their community. Some people have said to me that one of the issues that they don't like about me is that I won't rein my community in, and I won't. I don't think any of you did anything wrong. Like, honestly, I think more of the tender queers need pushback. I don't think that they should feel as comfortable as they do, lobbing accusations left and right in an effort to like slander people through oppression Olympics. If I do something fucked up, I'm willing to own up to it. I'm not above criticism. But a lot of the criticism isn't based on actual criticism. It's not based on anything except vibes. So there are a lot of definitions I see thrown around for what a tender queer is. But the term, as I'm using it, means someone who is a member of the LGBT community who uses social justice issues as a way to manipulate and harass others. Like, they use the language of systemic critique as a way to get what they want by attacking other people. And this is an issue, you kind of see it a lot. You see it a lot in these spaces. This is a big issue in the LGBT community, especially in online spaces. And the thing that is particularly a problem is that people get into these fights that don't need to be happening. They try to take a systemic issue and then they label their opponents as being perpetrators of the systemic issue when it's really just that they personally do not like them and they want to smear them and attack them. And in real life, when this shit happens, people just roll their eyes because it doesn't fucking matter. But on the internet, outrage is key. With tender queers, which are basically woke scold liberals who are part of the LGBT community, they pose an actual threat to the community itself because they're not interested in solidarity. They're not interested in building bridges. They're not interested in organizing. What they're mostly interested in is purity testing. And the reason why you don't see a lot of them with larger platforms is because they're incredibly insular. They have echo chambers because they can't exist outside of those echo chambers. If they tried to exist within the larger community, they would continually get into fights with people who do not give a shit.
Tenderqueer is a repackaging of the right-wing id pol, meaning identity politics. Marginalized people's plight and trans issues are identity politics. Of course, Republicans would make an acronym for identity politics to demonize us. Pushing its repackaging as tenderqueer is harmful to marginalized communities that are just asking for intersectionality with your solidarity. Writing off or grouping BIPOC, trans, and queer people as tenderqueers for pointing out valid criticisms is damaging. It silences the people who don't have access to a platform or a voice for the unique plight that white queer people and trans people don't experience. Trans misogynoir being one of those intersections that many trans people sit at, fighting for their survival. Black trans women being murdered at the rate of 80% is not a tenderqueer issue. Keffels and some other white queer people don't reach across the aisle and don't share visibility with BIPOC trans people. The respectability politics Black trans women would have to perform to have a tangible audience, saying the reason why we don't have larger platforms is because we're insular, ignores the complexities of racism, colorism, and palatability that BIPOC have to go through is completely tone deaf. And don't even get me started on her using woke scold. Woke scold being an offshoot of woke, which is an AAV term, which is African American Vernacular English. There's plenty more points I can go into, but it's plenty to sit with. Possibly some of you watching might struggle with some of these intersections. Before segueing into my next point, I'll need to talk about Elijah McClain. Elijah McClain was walking home on August 24th of 2019 when he got confronted by police after a police phone call deeming him suspicious. They put him in a chokehold that led to him needing paramedics. As he struggled to breathe, he asked for his basic humanity while they kept choking him out. Cops picked up their body cameras they intentionally dropped to hide evidence. The paramedics gave him the fatal shot of ketamine that left him brain dead. He was removed from life support after 2 days. His case went cold until almost a year later. Activists during the summer of 2020 revived Elijah McClain's case. People saw the parallels to George Floyd, especially with the unnecessary force and the chokehold. His case has slowly been getting updates as they finally are attempting to charge his killers. There was an update that Keffels saw and tweeted out to her audience. The tweet that Keffels made a lot of black people side at her because of her centering herself, which is very tone deaf. This led her to delete that tweet and misrepresented the people angry at it, reducing black people's discomfort as genderqueers, mocking her as a police brutality victim when that wasn't the case at all. She followed it with trying to call people grifters, saying we never tweeted or spoke about Elijah McClain, but when you search him up on her page, you see the bad faith call out only. I also checked if she ever tweeted about Black Lives Matter, but there was nothing that came up. There's another time Keffels deleted and misrepresented tweets about black people. She disingenuously wrote us off as people dogpiling a black man when in reality it was black queer and femmes checking him for his white supremacy talking points, acting as if non-black people were trying to use slurs at him when the coup memes were sent by black people. She states that she takes racism in activist circles seriously, which is interesting since she also deleted that tweet. She lost the bad faith narrative she created when black people shared these tweets. Some black femmes even went as far to dig up that man's anti-black talking points about fatherless homes. This showcased that he's not the token to die behind. The last tweets by her I'll showcase are her different treatments towards racism and transphobia. Believing it's okay to misgender a cis woman when she's being transphobic, but calling Dream ugly for racism is out of line in her books. She even went as far to attack Luna Oi, and had one of the stupidest talking points showing she was just punching down for clout.
One thing that is particularly frustrating to me with Luna is that she uses the rhetoric of American progressives in order to attack in order to attack people for not believing what she believes. She especially talks a lot about being a person of color. And in the context of Canada or the United States, that's absolutely true. In the context of Vietnam, that is not true whatsoever. And there are a lot more racialized people who have a far harder time in day-to-day life in Vietnam, especially indigenous people.
Luna Oi, a Vietnamese leftist YouTuber, minds her business and advocates for her own community. Sadly, debate bro streamers dogpile Luna as they try to package it as a rite of passage. The final point I'll make in this video is when Keffels went after a small trans streamer calling out trap content. Trap content being based in transphobia, the trope that comes from anime and manga that hardly is seen today.
When you create content and you lean heavily into tropes such as like I'm a trap, if you've built your entire existence on the hey, I'm actually a man, lol, but I look just like a woman, and I've you're gay because you like me, or I've fooled you. And your entire presentation is, on the surface, completely indistinguishable from a trans woman's.
How is Finn's entire platform built on transphobia?
Well, his entire thing is trap content, like fooling people into saying, "Look, you're gay for liking me. I'm actually a woman. Lol, I fooled you," sort of stuff. Like, how does the trans community not take strays from that? Don't you see that why that enables transphobes to say that we're like not real, or that we're actually traps?
No, I feel like they're gonna do this regardless.
Keffels was defending a large cis male streamer for only what I can guess is for clout. The next day, Finzer himself went to talk to poly people to gain an understanding.
I just never referred to myself as that, and when you were talking to Keffels, so I watched the Keffels thing.
Yeah.
It was, Keffels didn't really have a good argument to make because you were making it seem like I was using that word or I was referring to myself in that way.
Finster identifies as a cis man and was able to walk away knowing how to better approach his content moving forward. I also think Keffels shouldn't be so cavalier when going after a trans person, especially so hard as she did. Especially when you factor in how small she is compared to Keffels. And at last, the pride flag discourse. All I have to say is, have you not seen Pose? That said, I do think Keffels can continue to do good work and grow if she applies intersectionality. The purpose of this video is not to cancel her. Giving her critical support? Sure. But canceling her? It's not what I'm asking. With this all said, hopefully you're able to walk away with a better understanding what intersectionality doesn't look like and what it does.